Hey you toxic troglodytes! I will now be ranking the films of the DC Cinematic Universe. Number 16 is Suicide Squad. When the trailer for this film was originally released, it looked like a breath of fresh air compared to the dank dark feel of Zack Snyder's films. Even the cast choices were spot on. To be honest, the cast tried the best mostly, but the writing and direction of this film is utterly awful. Jared Leto's version of the Joker is abhorrent and shoehorned in for no reason, and it is an embarrassing portrayal of a classic character. Margot Robbie and Will Smith do a great job, but it doesn't save the film sadly. David Ayers can make a great film when he wants, but this was not a good match at all. The choice of villain and execution of the plot is god-awful, and overall watching the film it is like a chore. I actually think this may be one of the worst films ever made. Number 15 is Batman vs Superman, Dawn of Justice. This could have been a good film if more thought and planning was put into it. Playing catch up with the MCU, this was very much DC's version of Civil War, but because only one of the characters had their own solo film, the plot felt rather rushed. And then instead of trying to piece everything together in a coherent manner, it ends up putting in a lot of goofy characters and writing in it which almost turns the film into an unintentional comedy. Jesse Eisenberg's performance as Lex Luthor is incredibly misguided, and it ends up coming off as very hammy and goofy. Henry Cavill does a good job, and Ben Affleck surprisingly pulls off Batman very well. There is a good film buried underneath this train wreck, but sadly Zack Snyder's direction is a mixed bag, and his ego can get the best of him. It ends up just becoming a failed attempt at trying to cash in on what Marvel was perfecting at the time. Number 14 is Zack Snyder's Justice League. While the original was made under bad circumstances and surprisingly had a lot of drama going on behind it, I'm all for the creative team putting this project together. But when it came to the push for this film to be made, it did show off a very toxic side to this series' fan base. While the Joss Whedon attempt at this film was a fun thrill ride akin to what he did with Marvel, Snyder's version of this film is incredibly misguided, with overly artistic attempts to make it gritty with horribly placed slow-motion scenes and really bad choices of soundtrack. There is glimmer of good moments, but it's smothered by convoluted scenes, pushed in future goals that come off confusing, and an unneeded length for this type of film. Number 13 is Wonder Woman 1984. Overall not a bad film, but mostly misguided. It tries to do something different by adding a magical fantasy element into a rather serious superhero film, and it's interesting, but it's tonally all over the place. Pedro Pascal plays a great villain, but Gal Gadot's lead performance can be rather wooden. But credit where credit is due. Number 12 is Black Adam. Another misguided film. The casting was perfect for Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson for the character, but it's believed that his own ego was what crashed the success of this film and possibly the entire DC Cinematic Universe. The rest of the cast do a great job, especially the other superhero characters, but the plot is mostly a mess throughout. But it is enjoyable in places. Number 11 is Birds of Prey, and the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn. Thankfully Margot Robbie got her redemption arc with this film, because she really does play Harley Quinn incredibly well. This is mostly enjoyable as a fun anti-hero film, but it isn't perfect, but then again, neither is Harley Quinn. Fun and comedic when needed, it does mostly hit the mark with a fun villain performance from Ewan McGregor. Worth at least 1 or 2 watches. Number 10 is Justice League. Controversial, I know, but for some reason I found this film to be a lot of fun, and I still do. I don't know if it's Joss Whedon's contributions, the lack of Snyder's input or just the edit in general, but I think it's an overall enjoyable film and was a good attempt to match the team-up films of the MCU. Also, some of the comedy scenes are overall generally funny. Number 9 is Shazam! Fury of the Gods. After the success of the first film, this sequel didn't quite hit the mark, but it does take the childish nature and the family-orientated themes of the first film and take them further. The villains are great and the special effects are pretty interesting, with its size and scope. Number 8 is Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Not as good as his first solo movie, but a fun enough follow-up with great acting from Jason Momoa and Patrick Wilson. The comic scenes are great. To be honest, this film was undeservingly panned when it came out. It is a lot of fun. Number 7 is Blue Beetle. Sadly, the last film in the DC Cinematic Universe, this could have been an interesting addition to the Justice League. What really drives the film though is the fantastic ensemble cast, mixing great Hispanic culture with a lot of great comedy. The action scenes and premise are pretty great too. Number 6 is Man of Steel. The first film in the DC Cinematic Universe, this really did hit it out of the gate well. Taking the Superman story, but adding a gloomier mood with a sleeker aesthetic and darker tones, it is unique in its approach. Henry Cavill does a great job in the lead role, with a great ensemble cast too. Even if Michael Shannon isn't able to blink. There are some Snyderisms that can be distracting, but overall it still stands up. Number 5 is The Flash. This film was in developmental hell for many reasons, and I was thinking that the controversial actions of Ezra Miller would stop the film from being released, but I'm glad that it didn't. This movie is way too enjoyable for its own good. Bringing back fan-favorite characters and actors, it was very much a tribute to the fans of all the DC films past and present. It also might be the funniest film in the 600th world. And as much as I dislike them, Ezra Miller is fantastic as the lead and was very much born to play this role. If only they could clean up their actions and wise up. Number 4 is Wonder Woman. The first female-led film in the DC universe. It really could have gone incredibly wrong with horrible cliches, but thankfully the direction of Patty Jenkins is able to create an interesting blend of fantasy with war films. Gal Gadot surprisingly carries the film well, but the real heart is Chris Pine's performance. Great writing with some really cool action scenes, it is one of the most slept-on films in this series. Number 3 is Shazam! A complete risk for the series, putting this up against the dark and moody tones of the previous films. This could have backfired, but surprisingly it gave the whole thing a bright lift up. Taking a typical 90s family fantasy film, but setting it in the grittiness of the DC world, it tonally shouldn't work, but it does and it's a lot of fun. The cast is great, with great comic scenes between Zachary Levi and Jack Dylan Grazer, while Mark Strong has a lot of fun in the villain role. Number 2 is Aquaman. After conquering the horror world, hearing that James Wan was going to direct this film, I was very curious. But as always, James Wan is able to craft a very enjoyable film, with great direction, action scenes, special effects with a great cast. Before her controversy, Amber Heard does give a great supporting performance, but Jason Momoa shines in this starring role. One of the most enjoyable and well-made films out of this film series. In my opinion, the best film out of the DC Cinematic Universe is The Suicide Squad. Never before has a reboot been needed. Technically a sequel to the failed original, I was originally cautious with this one, but thankfully knowing that James Gunn was behind the production, I should have expected a very safe pair of hands. Having had success with his Guardians of the Galaxy films in the MCU, James Gunn is a master at making an enjoyable film, with fantastic comedy scenes, smart and witty direction choices and picking the best cast for the job. The original leftovers from this fest are a great treat, but what really carries the film is Idris Elba and John Cena, which thankfully later led to the great Peacemaker TV show. Peter Capaldi plays a great villain, with some interesting political commentary with his character and the overall screenplay. A mad but wonderful thrill ride, it just makes me excited for the new DC reboots which will be spearheaded by Gunn himself. Thanks for watching. Hopefully my channel doesn't fold like the DCU did. Give me another film series to do this with, or else I'll get The Rock to ruin your franchise.